Okay, thanks. I'll try going last, not to be too repetitious, but consider it reinforcement if I am repetitious. As Ward said, I've pretty much spent my entire career in the nonprofit sector, and I enjoy it very much. I almost can't imagine myself being someone who would fit in a bottom line corporation. It's just not who I am. I love charity. I love to give to charity. I love to volunteer for charity. I love to work in charity. When I was a teenager, I thought it was a cool thing to go to the public TV station and volunteer for the auction. I'm one of those people. And I still enjoy volunteering for a number of boards and committees and so forth. In terms of my Unitarian self, as Ward said, I am a member and past president and so forth of the UU Church of the South Hills, which we affectionately call Sunny Hill, if any of you know that name. And I've been a canvasser a number of times. I've never been the canvas chair, and we'll talk more about all that later, but certainly we all know it has many challenges. I met Joan a number of years ago when she came to Sunny Hill to help us resolve a certain issue, and I've enjoyed being on the resource development team of the OMD for a couple of years. I've learned a lot from it, and hopefully I've been able to give some insights back as well. And it's been very interesting to be involved at the district level, and I enjoy that. Not Your Parents' Offering Plate is a very interesting book. I was not aware of it until Ward and Joan got us on the bandwagon about this last year. I thought it was a very common sense book that I enjoyed reading. It reminded me of three sweeping statements you always hear fundraisers tend to say, sometimes with a chuckle. No one grows up wanting to be a fundraiser. Fundraising is not rocket science. And the famous people give to people, which really is very true. People give to the mission, and the mission is the critical thing. Absolutely, we all, I think, believe that. But there is an important element of that personal chemistry, that personal connection, that really does make a difference. And again, that's a subject ripe for discussion later today as well. All of those statements are true, but the book helped me to think about them in new ways and to realize that church fundraising really does have some special nuances that other institutional fundraising does not. And those of us who work in university settings and other nonprofits, I think, can definitely relate to that. So I'm going to relate to some key points of the book and add some of my own insights as well. You truly do have to make people want to give. You must inspire them, make it compelling, and sell it. There are many more worthy causes than money these days. As Ward said, we all get flooded in our mailboxes and now email boxes and Facebook postings and everything else with opportunities to give. I mean, and I love to give. I'm a charity-minded person. I'm sure all of you in this room are the same way, or you probably wouldn't be here. There's only so much. You can only do so much. You can only spread yourself so thin. How do you give? Where do you give? How much do you give? And what makes that happen? Belief in the mission of a church and the organization is certainly key. You must believe in what they do, but you also think you give because of your motivation in making it real. You have to show how a certain church program or facility or activity changes lives, as we've said that refrain many times already today. You have to make our world, your world, a better place. What will the impact be? A lot of my experience has been in foundation relations, and that is the #1 question foundations especially want to hear. What will the impact be of that gift to the task force, that gift to the foundation, that gift to the veterans? What will the impact be? How will it change lives? Leadership and fiscal stability are certainly key factors. It's a great idea to target your donor appeals on age, past giving, who's been at the church for 20 years as opposed to 2 years and so forth. But as we said before, that takes a great deal of time and effort, and very few churches give that the attention it really deserves. That's a good point to focus on. The author clearly advocates the pastor taking a lead role in fundraising, and again, that sounds wonderful. They should be more involved, and hopefully they can be more involved, but they are spread thin. And frankly, not everyone is cut out to be a fundraiser. That doesn't mean they should get off the hook and go stand in the corner and do nothing. They can be a good influencer, they can be involved, but not everyone is great at making the ask. It just depends on the person. A pastor or anyone has to overcome fear of rejection and make the ask positively, and remember that nothing is personal. Building strong relationships is key, as the author indicated, with several interesting examples. I especially love the one, and if those of you who haven't had a chance to read the book yet, you'll love this, about going out to the farmer after he's done his morning plowing, after he's had his lunch, and after he's watched Days of Our Lives, because that's the half hour of the day that he's in a really good mood, and you'll get him then. That's classic, because donors, and especially folks with more than a few bucks to spare, can be quirky. And you have to know how to appeal to them. Prospect Research, which I know Allison's folks work with at CMU, they research that kind of thing. They get to know people, because knowing your potential donors is critical. It's also critical to tap people for capital and estate support, as well as their annual pledge. And again, as we've said, most churches do poor jobs with this, unfortunately. I'm on the stewardship committee at my church. We started off with some gusto about 1.5 years ago. It's dwindled a little bit. A couple of people have fallen by the wayside. It just doesn't come together, even though the intentions are always good. Some additional thoughts from life's lessons along the way and a lifetime of nonprofit experience. A great deal of charitable giving really does get at people's places of worship, as we know, but not as much as it used to be the case. And he cites a lot of statistics in the book about Giving USA and the percentages and so forth, but I know from my own reading and stuff as well that people don't give overwhelmingly to their churches, synagogues, mosques, fellowships, whatever, by the same overwhelming percentages that they used to. You have your alma mater, you have arts groups, you have community groups, you have healthcare organizations, and those increasing obligations are eating up larger pieces of the pie. Church giving is still the overwhelming target or source, or recipient, I should say, of fundraising, but not as much as was the case. When is it ever enough? People always ask that question, how much do they expect me to give? Here we are talking about money again. Well, sure. Your church probably just finished its canvass and its budgeting process, and maybe you fell a bit short of goal. What is realistic? What are the obvious major factors that may have affected your goal or not reaching your goal? Maybe you've lost some key members due to death. Maybe people have moved away. Maybe people have been dissatisfied. Maybe you've had some overriding issue that caused some discomfort. The economy and job losses are real factors, and people always like to point to that kind of thing. And of course that's very real. But I tend to think church giving is so personal and so close to people's hearts that it's almost other types of issues, aside from those standard things, that make people make a radical change in their church giving. And again, that's a good topic for later on. I think people really have to have some very pressing overriding reason, especially if they're going to greatly reduce their church giving. Generally, some other thoughts about canvases. How are they done? Are they consistent and are they effective? And does your church seem to do it differently year after year, or the same year after year? Do you have a kickoff dinner with a motivational speech? Do you try to request one-on-one meetings that a lot of people don't want to have? Or do you try the fabulous express pledging, where you encourage everyone to come in with their form on one day, drop it off and run, and heave a sigh of relief that it's all over with? I know a little bit about all these methods because my congregation has used them all at one time or another. And everyone has its pros and cons. There is no perfect way, there is no perfect reason. But I find it a little bit disconcerting to have such inconsistency from year to year. As I said, I've never been the canvas chair, but I have expressed to a number of people that, like, last year didn't we do this, and now we're doing this, and doesn't that seem a little weird? And then, of course, you always have the people who won't pledge no matter what. And how do you handle that issue? And again, that's a good topic for later on. Face-to-face sessions can be great and effective, but they can also be awkward. It's very personal. Money is a very personal issue, and especially in a church where you're dealing with people who very well might be your longtime personal friends, your neighbors, maybe even family members, your kids that might go to school together, all that sort of thing. It's a little more distant and a little more removed when you're in a university setting or some other kind of organizational setting where you might know of this person that you're going to ask for money, but they're probably not your immediate personal friend or neighbor. So it is different, and it brings up some special challenges. Many people feel more personally, I think, about their church giving than to any other kind of organization, and that's something you need to be very aware of and take a bit of a different, more intimate approach. The author stresses belief in the mission, of course, and that is so true. And let me relate that just briefly to the organization where I now work, the Pittsburgh AIDS Task Force, because obviously you can imagine an issue like HIV/AIDS awareness and prevention and testing is a very intimate kind of cause that affects many people. A lot of people tend to ask me how we've been coping with the economic transition, how have we been with our fundraising. I've only been there since June of 2009 after working other places, but I tell them we've been doing well, we've been holding in there. You know, corporate and foundation giving has fallen a little bit, although it's recovering now, I'm glad to say. But the real core for us is we have such a loyal donor base who believe in the cause so strongly that it would take some devastating effect on their income not to have them make that annual gift a year, and some people give quite generously beyond that. The fact that our supporters believe in our mission and care so passionately about our cause of reaching out to people and helping the 600 clients who rely on us, that they're going to keep up that support because they feel very strongly about it, it means something to them, and they truly believe that we make a difference. People want to support a cause that is worthy, successful, and respectable, not one that is sinking or suffering. Christopher makes a good point in the book about that, of always being positive. Even if times are not the brightest, desperation is never pretty. Just like in dating, desperation is never pretty. Maybe your pastor is not the best fundraiser, but they can still be effective. They can still be there as an influence. They can still play a role. Make them play that role. Because I've seen most pastors who tend to think, oh, I feel awkward doing that. That's not for me. Convince them otherwise. Back to the issue of pledging. Of course it's desirable because it's money you can count on. You need to know for your budgeting, your bill paying, and so forth. But some people simply will not pledge out of financial concerns, stubbornness, or fear of commitment. It's troublesome financially, but it also raises concerns over whether non-pledgers should be considered full-fledged members or just friends. That's an issue my church has addressed, and maybe some of yours have as well, and we should talk about that later as well. There are no perfect answers, but I think if you make people feel needed, important, and appreciated, and make them feel that they really are supporting quality programs, you'll find success. Overall, I find the book to be a very good practical sense guide, well worthy of vacation reading, beach reading, or keeping in your office and helping to propel you on to success. Thanks.